actually going to happen after the end of the Burning Crusade this time around. Because when this entire anniversary journey started, we already kinda knew where it would end. You know, for the past 6 years, every version of Classic WoW has come with some sort of expiry date attached to it. Every server, every expansion, every season. You already kinda know when the journey ends before it even begins. And honestly, I think that's the real reason why people are obsessing over the idea of Classic Plus right now. Not just because they want new raids, not just because they want class balance, but because for the first time since 2019, players are hoping Blizzard might finally create a version of Classic that actually lasts. And once you start looking at Blizzard's history, you know, the shutdown of Nostalrius, the rise and fall of Turtle WoW, and everything they experimented with during Season of Discovery, it starts to feel like we might be heading towards something much, much bigger than just another seasonal server. So let's talk about some possible futures for Classic WoW, and why I think only one of them actually solves the problem players have had since 2019. But before we dive in deep, make sure to check out the description for some awesome items I would dearly recommend. Back in 2016, Blizzard shut down the private vanilla server named Nostalrius. The outcry was immense, players flooded forums, YouTubers covered it without respite, and the entire WoW community effectively compelled Blizzard to acknowledge something they'd long overlooked. Players profoundly desired Classic WoW back. But everybody remembers the famous quote,
"I think you do, but you don't."
Eventually, Classic launched in 2019, and it was a massive buzz. Twitch skyrocketed, content creators were formed, memories were created. Now fast forward to today. Blizzard recently took action against Turtle WoW. What's fascinating is that Turtle WoW didn't just preserve vanilla, they expanded it, introducing new quests, new zones, new leveling content. A release date? Honestly, I cannot be certain about that, but I can easily envision Blizzard mirroring the approach of Season of Discovery. Announcement first, then immediate release, while excitement peaks. However, before we dive too far into the speculation, let's discuss some realistic outcomes that needs examination. The first potential path seems to be the safest for Blizzard. Anniversary servers might seamlessly transition into Wrath of the Lich King before we catch a glimpse of Classic Plus. We might get something like the Classic Plus beta, which, if we're to go by the Classic WoW beta back in 2018, before the release back in 2019, that had a huge hype factor for what's to come. And realistically, this kinda makes sense. A large number of players are still clamoring for Wrath. I know in my guild a lot of people are talking about how much they would like to play Wrath once again. For many, Wrath wasn't just the pinnacle of Classic, it was the pinnacle of WoW itself. The end of the epic trilogy, the fall of the Lich King. Things that people have been working towards for years, even back since the release of Warcraft 3. Not to mention the eerily poetic timing involved. Retail's upcoming saga ultimately leads into The Last Titan, which is set in Northrend, out of all places. So if Blizzard adheres to their roadmap, Wrath Classic and The Last Titan could emerge simultaneously. Retail returning to Northrend, Classic revisiting Northrend. Honestly, that almost feels too perfectly orchestrated to be coincidental. If Blizzard opts for this direction, Classic Plus might be delayed until late 2027. Why I think this is a reasonable approach? Well, RAF guarantees player retention. Blizzard is well aware that RAF is a lucrative venture. It provides the classic team with additional development time. It's far less risky than unleashing the entirely new content. And from a business angle, this could very well be the safest route. However, the dilemma with this scenario is that the downside rests primarily on fatigue, because ultimately reliving the exact same expansion cycle over and over strips away the magic. Classic into the Burning Crusade, into Wrath of the Lich King, reset, repeat. I do honestly believe that Blizzard might recognize this. At some stage, nostalgia can no longer sustain the experience. Especially since players already know the metas in what's good and what's not. They already know the raid progressions. They know that next Rammus will be a cakewalk. They know that Ulduar will be the wall, and they know that the fall of the Lich King is inevitable. They know the economic nuances. They know how to make their gold on every server. And they know the lifespan of said server. Since, like I said, they know that the end of the Lich King is looming. This means that the veil of mystery has been lifted. Honestly, I think numerous classic players are growing weary of emotionally investing in worlds they know are destined to be ephemeral. Classic Plus debuts after the Sunwell Plateau has finished. This is the scenario I personally find is most plausible. TBC reaches its climax at Sunwell Plateau, a legendary raid taking down Kil'jaeden himself. The expansion naturally comes to a close, and instead of directly transitioning to Wrath, Blizzard could unveil something brand new. They could reveal Classic Plus and combine that with TBC era servers. So those players who love TBC can stay in that world, and for those longing for something new can jump on that train. And honestly, this solution addresses numerous concerns simultaneously. Firstly, it allows TBC to complete its life cycle without the interference of new content. People can go on the journey throughout Outland, they can finish the journey in the Isle of Quel'Danas, and then they can be happy. Secondly, it reserves Wrath for a later time, which is a crucial point in this scenario. Wrath acts as Blizzard's emergency nostalgia button. If Classic Plus begins to stall, if content pacing becomes problematic, if player engagement starts dwindling, Wrath will always be poised, waiting to revive the interest. More importantly, this approach finally paves the way for Classic to evolve, escaping the confines of perpetual reruns. No more resets, not another rerun, rather genuine progression. And once they do release Wrath of the Lich King, because believe me they will, once Arthas has been slain, Frostmourne shattered, and Tyrion Fordring crowning Bolvar Fordragon as the new Lich King, there will be Wrath era servers as well. This will leave us with Classic era realms for those who love the classic game, TBC era realm for those who love the journey into the Outlands, and Wrath era servers for those who enjoy the conquest of Northrend. And alongside that, of course, Classic Plus. Why I do think this is the optimal approach? Mainly because it preserves momentum. At its juncture, enthusiasm surrounding Classic Plus is probably at an all-time high right now. If Blizzard delays too long, players might simply lose their interest. In truth, Blizzard has been subtly testing the waters for years. Season of Mastery was their first call, where they tuned up raid difficulty and tried adding new mechanics into old existing raids. Next came Hardcore, inspired by the legendary YouTuber Kargos himself. A community-made player mode turned into reality with official servers. And then of course we have Season of Discovery, Blizzard's latest attempt at testing the waters, with massive class changes, revamped leveling structures, and new content added into the structure of the original game. Each of these experiences seemed like Blizzard were attempting to grasp what Classic players genuinely desire. And Classic Plus certainly appears to be the next logical step. No seasonal gimmicks, not another temporary server, but rather a version of Classic that continues to grow and evolve. The challenging aspect of this is that Classic Plus means something entirely different depending on who you ask. Some players advocate for modest vanilla-friendly adjustments, while others demand class balancing, new specs, tougher raids, some modern systems, and some demand entirely new mechanics. If Blizzard misjudges the tone, the backlash could be severe. And the more Blizzard modernizes Classic, the more it begins shedding its original identity. Striking that balance is going to be essential to get this project off the ground and become the new big MMO thing on the market. Honestly, my interest in the old school WoW journey actually started with a YouTube video from Preach Gaming called The Problems in the Mists. It's an amazing video, and I would greatly advise you to check it out once you had the time, even though that video is released 13 years ago today. At the time we were headed out to the mysterious lands of Pandaria, the message still hits home in 2016. By creating a journey that's full of adversity and inaccessibility, we create an experience that's memorable for the player base. We can't get that feeling from a solved game that's been rerun and re-released time and time again. And we can't get that feeling in retail, since every time they release new content, you're brought up to the curtain gear level in a new season. For example, in order to progress through Vanilla WoW and original TBC, we need to go through Molten Core to get to Blackwing Lair, onwards to AQ40 and end up in the floating Dread Citadel of Naxxramas in the Eastern Plaguelands. The Burning Crusade emphasized this even more and lead into that identity. It goes against what retail stands for today, and we can feel it in the Anniversary servers. Attunements starting with Karazhan, Magtheridon and Gruul that led us onto the journey to the Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep. Once we slew these lieutenants of Illidan's Stormrage, we could go on and journey into Mount Hyjal and the Black Temple. And we thought we were done at the Black Temple, but then we're going on and finishing the journey in Sunwell Plateau, the Isle of Quel'Danas, back on Azeroth. So with this in mind, I feel that my personal desires for Classic Plus are quite straightforward. I don't crave retail systems, I'm not after limitless borrowed power, I don't yearn for WoW 2. What I truly seek is a version of Classic that continues to unfold and expand the world instead of erasing it every couple of years. New zones, new dungeons, new quests. Perhaps some unfinished vanilla concepts finally coming to fruition. And yet, recreating that old school journey is the most important thing, because it exceeds the content. It will live within the DNA of the game itself. It has to lean into the journey and lean into the inaccessibility. As I navigate through life, I increasingly discern that the element I miss most from early WoW and my early WoW memories is not what I thought it would be. It's the sensation that the world genuinely mattered. That your character inhabited a space that felt integral and permanent. The feeling of awe when I saw a player that's much further ahead on his journey than I am. The feeling will give me something to work towards. I firmly believe that this sentiment resonates with many players, and when they yearn for Classic Plus or remember the good old days of old school World of Warcraft. Since 2019, every version of Classic has had some semblance of temporality. You consistently know where it culminates, the next expansion, the forthcoming reset, the next seasonal server. Eventually, players cease to immerse themselves emotionally in worlds they recognize won't endure. This is why I wholeheartedly believe that the second scenario is the most logical. Not due to guaranteed outcomes, but because it grants Classic a chance to advance rather than perpetually reenacting prior sagas. Ultimately, I believe this embodies what players genuinely seek at this point. Not merely nostalgia, but a world that continues to flourish without being swept away by yet another reset. But perhaps my perspective is entirely misguided. Who knows? This is just my opinion piece in the end. I'm just some guy putting my opinion out there into the nether of the internet for anyone to judge. But what do you think Blizzard will pursue? Wrath first, instant Classic Plus, or maybe, just maybe, they've all tricked us and they're just going for endless seasonal cycles because it contains the least amount of corporate risk. And then there's the even more crucial question. What does Classic Plus signify for you? What's your version of Classic Plus? Let me know in the comments and enjoy the rest of your day, evening, afternoon,